Welcome back, listeners and viewers. We are here with another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I am your host, Aaron Eggert. My guest today is a natural-born storyteller. From journalism to politics to PR, he has spent his career shaping how leaders are perceived by the public, media, and key decision makers. Let's roll up our proverbial sleeves and get to work with Brian McClung. Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. It's so great to do this with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and let's just level set the listeners and viewers real quick. We both came off of you had two events yesterday, one of which you moderated for us. I had some speaking to do myself, and we're both kind of nursing some voices a little bit here. So if people are listening, they're like, "What is going on with these two?" We're just nursing some voices. Everyone, take it easy.
A little inner Jack Nicholson, like just a little raspy.
Right.
Like we're trying to set ourselves up. Maybe if GM is looking for a new spokesperson, they want to ditch that guy from Smartless. Like we've got
Will Arnett, screw that guy.
Gravelly tones for you here, guys.
Yeah. So let's bring a little bit of journalism to this podcast for a change. You've got a pretty extensive career in both, like I said, journalism and politics. So we're going to get there. But before we start getting there, we got to figure out how you got shaped to get to that point. So as I say with every other guest that we have on this show, paint me a little bit of a picture of what it was like to be little Brian McClung.
I had a lot of fun, right? I was your redheaded troublemaker, and our family moved around a lot when I was little. And so I thought that was natural. My dad was kind of moving up in the corporate ladder. The company that he worked for was a big conglomerate. He was getting started out first on their accounting side, and then as a plant manager at an increasingly larger plant. So I was born in Denver, which sounds great. People are like, oh, how'd you like Colorado? Well, we moved when I was 6 months old, so not a lot of memories of the early days in Denver. But then we were Denver, and then here in the Twin Cities briefly, and then in Virginia, and then in Chicago, and then in Dallas, Texas, all before I started second grade. And so we just go, every year and a half, like the moving vans would pull up and we'd, grab our stuff and get ready to go. And like I said, when you're little, you think that's kind of universal. So I'm like, well, everybody's doing this, right? And it wasn't until we got to Minnesota and I was, starting second grade here that I realized like, oh, wait, like all these kids have just been here the whole time and been doing this thing. And like, they even think I'm kind of a latecomer joining at second grade. And then you kind of come to find that like, that is in some ways a uniquely Minnesotan thing, that like Minnesotans think like, if you're not on your third or fourth generation here, it's weird, right? This is a state that people like come to and stay in. Yeah. And I'll admit, I've always had a little chip on my shoulder about not being like a true-blooded Minnesotan. And that sounds crazy to most people in the rest of the country, right?
It sounds crazy to me.
Like you moved here when you were 7, right? But still, there was a little bit of that, like, well, we're not sure, right? We're not sure. Our friends are the guys we started being friends with in kindergarten. So I've tried to be welcoming to non-Minnesotans throughout my life as a result. And in fact, many of my close friends are not native Minnesotans, because I think people can relate on that idea that, Minnesota can be kind of a weird place to break into sometimes. So we moved around a lot, got here in second grade, went to elementary school in Mendota Heights. Our family lived in Mendota Heights, suburb of St. Paul, and then, through to junior high and graduated from high school at Henry Sibley High School, West St. Paul, Mendota Heights area. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Still have some great friends from all of that, but definitely that experience of just kind of every year and a half, 2 years when you're little, like going on to the next place, like it does kind of impact the way that you look at things, I think.
So, I think moving here in second grade, 7 years old, is very different than moving here when you're like in ninth grade, right? Because you've got yet your formidable years ahead of you where, a lot of shaping is going to be starting to take hold. So then as you look at your high school years, I always think about like extracurricular activities, like kind of inform some of the things that you're going to do in the future, athletics, any other things that you did out, like what kind of things did you do outside of school? And on top of that, like question, like B part of that question is, were you a good student? Because you seemed like you'd be a really good student. You seemed really smart.
Well, I appreciate that. I was one of those kids that loved playing sports growing up, and it was always a three-sport kid. I played soccer in the fall, basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring and summer. I had varying degrees of success in those sports. And then as I got older, realized that, athletics was probably not my foremost skill, that public speaking and acting and doing those kinds of things might actually be a better fit for me. So it's funny because started out in high school playing three sports, and by the end was only playing one. I kept playing baseball all the way through, but then instead of doing those sports, I transitioned into, in my sophomore year, there was an audition for the high school musical. They were doing Rodgers and Hammerstein Carousel. And I thought, like, well, that would be cool. So I recruited a couple of my friends from the soccer team, and I was like, we should go be in this musical because this would be a lot of fun. And there are a lot of girls there, and we can hang out with them.
Right.
And that would be, maybe more fun than the sports things that we're doing. So figured that out and was like, then you kind of get the bug on something like that. So more theater stuff in my junior year. And then by my senior year, it's kind of doing the leading roles in the fall drama. In the spring that year, we did the musical Grease. And so I had the role of Kaniki, which is the best role in Grease. Danny Zuko, he's really a wimp. We like to make fun of the Danny Zuko character, John Travolta. But Kaniki is actually the head of the Thunderbirds. He's, Rizzo is his girlfriend, she's the cool one. And so, was doing some of that stuff by then. And then alongside that, I really always had a bug for journalism and was interested in it. And, my family, though, my dad was a business guy. My mom was an educator. She also worked with the YMCA, was kind of involved in community stuff there. And we just talked about politics and public affairs and those kinds of things at home. Nobody worked in it. I didn't know people that were elected officials or anything like that, but I was just always really interested in journalism and politics. And so got myself into the school newspaper and then ended up as the editor of our high school newspaper by my senior year. So I knew sort of in that junior, senior, and high school age, that I wanted to do something related to journalism, storytelling, broadcasting along those lines. And so I think that was part of that evolution of finding, the theater and the speech team and some of those things, was exploring what I might be able to do in that realm.
So in journalism, right, that's a big, broad term. And you talked about the newspaper, but then you also got into broadcast journalism, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Did writing come pretty natural to you?
It did. I loved writing. And my mom was an English teacher before, I was born, and then she was home with us. She later went back into teaching and taught English as a second language, ELL, in the public schools in Eagan and Apple Valley, Rosemont. And so, she really loved words. So I think it was my mom's just love of English and vocabulary and just how my parents talked to us growing up. They really talked to us like we were adults. And I think it helped us develop really a robust vocabulary and an interest in language. And so I just remember being a sophomore in high school and in a composition or English class, writing an essay, and my teacher saying this is like you're a young, Andy Rooney on 60 Minutes, telling this story and really drawing people in the creative way that you use language. And that really stuck with me. You have those moments where a teacher encourages you and says, you're really good at this. You should think of this. It could be something that you might want to do. And so that stuck with me. And so I really did, work on those kind of developing those writing skills and trying to be creative. And I, did a lot of reading, and I think that was something that was just, that came from my parents, and that was something that they valued and thought really highly of.
And then going into politics a little bit, and I'm not going to go into politics here, but I am going to ask a question that I think, when you get into politics, you typically take a path, right? And so do you felt like your path into politics was shaped by the perspective of your parents? Or do you think that your parents kind of let you figure it out on your own and tried to play a role in informing that, but then surrounding you with other opportunities to learn about both sides of the aisle?
Yeah, I never intended to work in politics. And I didn't even really think that those were jobs, right? I think most people
Right.
don't even think of that as oh, you can go and help these people in elected office. It found me entirely, and we'll talk about that story. But I think growing up, as I said, we used to talk about these things at the dinner table. And fundamentally, my dad was and is kind of an Eisenhower Republican, right? Very kind of socially moderate, traditional Republican. His dad worked for Boeing when he was growing up, first in Wichita, then in Seattle. So kind of traditionalist, kind of free market Republicans. My mom was really kind of a FDR Democrat. She grew up on a farm in South Central Illinois. Her parents were that kind of prototypical kind of farmer, we all do better working together, taking care of one another background. And so it was really, kind of moderate voices on both sides, but really my parents used to joke about how they would cancel each other's vote out when they voted for president, those kind of things. So I, was kind of growing up in that Reagan era. And, like a lot of young people then, it's kind of that Alex P. Keaton phenomenon, right? Where you're wow, America's doing great again. Reagan is this charismatic leader, we're winning the Cold War, all of that. So I think all of that kind of came together to kind of infuse my perspective. But I never thought about being a Republican or a Democrat, high school, college. I did not do college Republicans or anything. Frankly, I think if you're a little too into it when you're that young, I don't know, it just kind of weirds me out, right? I'm
Yeah, I'm with you a
good
little
for
bit.
you. I'm maybe take some time and just get out into the world first and keep an open mind about where you're coming from. And, and that's how I thought of it. And then, got my career started in journalism. And then, like I say, politics just sort of found me after that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine being a young person. I think we're roughly about the same age, right? I would say we're Gen Xers. I consider myself kind of a cusper because I have a lot of millennial traits or whatever, but yet, and we talked about this yesterday at the event of how many Gen Xers there are, and, even on the panel, but think about, can you even imagine what it would be like growing up with the social media content that's being pumped into your face constantly about separate sides? I mean, I feel like when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, everything was on the table, and you could have conversations with your parents about things. And I grew up in a really liberal household, and laborers and of the such. And so, but yet still there was some conservative thought processes that they adopted as well. So I felt like it was almost like there was a blending there, where now I can't even imagine that being a thing because it's just so much polarization, but yet the social media content is constantly slamming you in the face.
Yeah. Well, now it feels like now you have to pick a team and go with that team.
Yeah,
and if you step out of line with what the norms are of that team, then they just pound you back.
Yeah.
And that's so unhealthy. You ought to be able to, especially, in your late teens and 20s, sort of figure out where you're coming from and what your values are and how you approach this stuff. And now it's if you just say the wrong thing somewhere, right, these people turn on you. So it really does feed into that polarization that we're seeing and that sorting. And that's right. I think back to the people that I were friends with, in college and in my early career, nobody thought about anybody's politics, really, right? Like you
Right.
might have some sense of it, but like nobody really cared. And now it feels like everybody's got to like announce where they are and what
Yeah.
they're doing
Yeah.
and why they think how they do. And it's like, it just seems really tiring and not ideal. And I don't know how we unwind it. I mean, that's the difficult thing. Like this stuff is here to stay.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to like manage and kind of work through and give people the space to, to figure out where they're coming from.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole nother podcast on that, and maybe someday. But let's stay focused on you. So, it's fascinating when we get people on the show that I'm still gonna say you're Minnesotan. So you grew up in Minnesota, right? And so you grew up in Minnesota. So many people, we've got so many great small colleges, and the education system is here for secondary education. And I always find it fascinating when someone makes a conscious decision to go outside of the state. But I'm not talking about Wisconsin and, the Dakotas and Iowa. I'm talking about going to the coasts. And you made a conscious decision to go to the East Coast. What attracted you to your college, and what college did you go to?
Yeah. So, when I was looking at colleges, kind of my criteria were I wanted a school that had a good journalism program because I was focused on that, knew I really thought I wanted to do that. I wanted to go to a smaller school, right? I wanted to go somewhere where I could feel like, you get to know people and you had a community, and I didn't want to be overwhelmed. I wanted to go to school that was relatively hard to get into, right? I wanted to challenge myself and kind of be surrounded by other people who, were able to kind of get over that hurdle and be there and wanted to be there. And then I wanted to go to school that was at least one full day's drive away from Minnesota. So if my parents were coming to see me, I had plenty of advance notice and I could hide all the bad stuff that I was doing and, get ready. So I very much in my head thought to myself, this might be the period of my life where I don't live in Minnesota, where I can experience another part of the country and another kind of cultural experience, and wanted to do that. So the schools I looked at were essentially all Eastern West Coast, maybe a couple of Midwestern, but wanted to get outside of what I had experienced. And so Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, is a school of about 16 to 1,800 students. There's, about 400 some per graduating class. It is, one of the top liberal arts schools in the country. If you look at it, it's kind of like Carleton College in the alternate universe, right? So it's like that kind of school. So Carleton in U.S. News and World Reports is typically like number 11 National Liberal Arts School. Washington and Lee is about number 18. Right. So it's in that same zone as a, highly recognized national liberal arts school. We had students there from, I think, 48 or 49 states. People come from everywhere. They come from, around the world to go to school there. Good reputation. First journalism program in the country. It was started there after the Civil War, and just this kind of old historic setting. And I got some information from them when I was a junior in high school about a summer program that they did called Summer Scholars. And you could go to the university for 1 month, for the month of July, between your junior and senior year in high school, live in the dorms for a month and take classes from actual college professors. And I thought, well, this is awesome. First of all, I'll get away from my parents for a month. That'll be fun. I get to pretend like I'm in college. And I get to check out this school that's kind of one of the schools that I'm starting to look at. So I go to this summer program, the July before my senior year in high school, and it was like, fell in love. Like, it's unbelievable. Right. I mean, this college is like, just like close your eyes and picture like East Coast College, red brick, white columns, ivy, lush green lawn, like the whole deal. It's in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So there's like these rolling, small mountains all around. In the fall, it's unbelievable. It's in this small town of about 8,000 people. Virginia Military Institute is right next door. So it's this kind of small college town. And it's just, I can't imagine really a better place to go to school and just kind of be in that bubble for 4 years and just do that. So it's Yeah, I met all the criteria. I did it. I loved that summer program. I actually applied early decision when I was a senior in high school. So I got accepted and knew I was going by Christmas of my senior year in high school, which contributed to a significant senior slide.
Yeah.
But, nevertheless, kind of knew what I wanted to do at that point.
Did you do a standard 4 years?
Yep. Did 4 years there. My regret is that I never studied abroad because I think everybody should try to do that. But I loved the school so much, I couldn't bear to miss a semester. I was just dialed into everything that was happening there. So went to school there for 4 years and then, came back to Minnesota and started at WCCO after that.
So before we dive into that, and then we're gonna take a quick break here in a second, but I got one question. So I'm a college dropout, right? I went to college for a couple months and was like, this isn't for me. So I always find it fascinating about how people reflect back on their college time. And so many people have a multitude of different responses. And so I'll ask you this. Do you look back on one thing in your time at Washington Lee that had a profound effect on you in the trajectory of your career or your life or something like that? Is there one thing that is just if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know if I'd be even sitting here right now?
Yeah, you know what it was for me? Roger Mudd, who was the anchor of the NBC Nightly News and had co-anchored the CBS Evening News prior to Walter Cronkite. He was essentially the number 2 to Walter Cronkite. Roger Mudd was a Washington Lee alum and came back and taught a class my senior year. Would drive down from Washington, D.C. We're about 2.5 hours from D.C. and came and taught a class. It was the only class in college that I never missed. One of the classes. I was not great at always showing up for my college classes, but Professor Mudd there, and he brought down Bob Schieffer, who was doing Face the Nation. He brought down some of these other great journalists, and just having the opportunity to be in that classroom with somebody like Roger Mudd, who was really at the peak of journalism. He was the person that, of course, interviewed Ted Kennedy when Kennedy was thinking about running for president, asked him why he was running for president, and Kennedy's inability to answer the question knocked him out of the race. And this guy's our professor. So having him there and learning from him. And so Roger Mudd and I then corresponded after I graduated, right? I, went to work at a CBS station here in Minneapolis, and we would write about that and, send me handwritten letters, in the mid-90s after I was out of school. And so that, just having that opportunity to hear and learn from somebody like that and think about how he went from being a student there, like I was at the time, to what he did, and where you can take that. So that's something that, I really, reflect back on that opportunity and how unique that was.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad I asked that. I just pulled that one out of my ass. I thought I didn't have anything. I don't have nothing planned, actually. That's how I do this podcast. But that's an awesome story. That I could see why that would be major impactful, right? I know that person's name, and I don't even know anything about journalism. So that is huge.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, it was incredible.
All right, well, let's take a quick break here. Let's get into the career, because you've had a fascinating career and it's cool. I don't want to dive into it. So let's take a quick break here. We'll listen to a few of our community supporters. We're going to be right back with Brian.
As a boutique Twin Cities-based investment banking firm, Madeira Partners works closely with family, founder, and management-owned businesses, bringing over 25 years of experience and hundreds of successful transactions to the table. It's in their DNA to educate owners on what potential exit opportunities look like, along with any industry or company-specific things to think about to make your business more attractive to potential buyers. Regardless if you want to sell tomorrow or in 10 years, the team at Madeira Partners would love to provide their expertise and guidance along the way. Take some time to explore their website at madeirapartners.com. Madeira Partners, your life's work deserves our best work. The topic of talent is hot in organizations of any size, and I would argue none more than small to mid-sized businesses. That's why it's crucial to have a partner to help you navigate all the HR idiosyncrasies so you can focus on working on your business and not in it. Insperity is a full-service HR partner with a high-touch, high-tech platform helping owners work through challenges like employee retention, company culture, and benefits, just to name a few. Do yourself a favor and explore all they have to offer at Insperity.com. Insperity, HR that makes a difference. United Healthcare is dedicated to helping people live healthier lives and making the health system work better for everyone by simplifying the healthcare experience, meeting consumer health and wellness needs, and sustaining trusted relationships with care providers. UHC is continually focused on building a modern, high-performing health system via improved access, affordability, outcomes, and experiences. With a network of over 1.6 million physicians and healthcare professionals in over 6,000 hospitals, United Healthcare is dedicated to connecting employers and their employees to better health by offering quality benefits designed for affordability. For more information, visit United Healthcare at www.uhc.com. United Healthcare, helping people live healthier lives. When you think of a typical CPA firm, you probably think of tax planning. Well, that just scratches the surface of what Boulay offers their clients. By providing smart, in-depth thinking from experts in accounting, audit, tax, and business consulting, they know what it takes to achieve financial success. Whether it's protecting your business, building your wealth, or securing your future, you can count on Boulay to go beyond addressing just financial matters and providing you with tailor-made, workable solutions. Learn about all they have to offer at BoulayGroup.com. Boulay, helping you get there. Tradition Capital Bank is a local bank that has the products and capabilities to service middle-market companies, nonprofits, and their owners, employees, and families by offering a high-touch approach paired with customizable solutions. Think of them as your nimble allies serving with generosity, care, and precision. Tradition starts with the assumption that there's always more to learn, try, and discover, aiming to find the best yes for whomever they have the privilege of working beside. From a foundation of trust, Tradition takes disciplined, smart risks to help people grow beyond what they even thought possible. Tradition Capital Bank is the second largest privately owned bank headquartered in the Twin Cities, and with locations in Edina, Wayzata, and North Oaks, Minnesota, alongside their office in Scottsdale, Arizona, Tradition Capital Bank is committed to big bank offerings with a small bank ethos. Let their team be the friend you need in your next financial move.
Tell me if this sounds familiar. Your business is having challenges with adding revenue, or you're ready for quicker growth and scale. Your sales team lacks a coach or mentor to help guide and excel their production, and you're not quite sure who the best resource is for sourcing and replacing sales professionals on your team. When you're looking for a company that provides sales solutions that drive growth, look up Sales Homie. Sales Homie is the premier fractional CRO or VP sales agency, additionally offering sales recruiting and placement services, sales leadership coaching, and sales team training programs. Don't put your business at risk with low revenues and uninspired sales professionals. Learn more about Sales Homie by visiting their website at saleshomie.com. Sales Homie, sales solutions that drive growth.
All right, we're back with Brian McClung. Brian, I'm excited to dive into some of this stuff. You know, I think about the time that you started at WCCO. What year did you start at WCCO out of school?
Yeah, so I graduated in 1995, and I actually came back and I did the broadcast journalism program at what was then called Brown Institute. They rebranded Brown College, folded in with some other schools. And so Brown Institute fundamentally is the radio broadcasting school that most of the people that you listen to on the radio in the Twin Cities and the upper Midwest did their broadcast training there. So, you know, Dave Ryan and Tom Bernard and, you know, down just everybody you can think of.
Yeah.
They were probably at Brown. So I came back and did that program in part because to get an internship at WCCO TV, you needed to be in an education program. And so I had already graduated from, you know, my 4-year university in Virginia, came back and I'm like, I got to get my foot in the door somehow. I'm like, well, I could continue to practice kind of the broadcast elements of this profession by going to Brown and also use that as a way to get into the internship program. And so I did that. Now, most of the people at Brown are like just straight out of high school. They just want to go and be on the radio in Wilmer, and they come and do a 9-month program. And then like they're 20 years old and they're on the radio in some small market. In the class of like 24 of us when I enrolled that summer of 95 at Brown, like 3 or 4 of us had graduated from college and were kind of doing, you know, what I was doing. But most of the people were just like straight out of high school or second career or trying to, you know, find something else, a path into broadcasting. So I do that and get an internship at WCCO with the I-Team. So that's the investigative unit
right.
at CCO, right? They don't really brand it that way anymore. I don't know why. It was like everybody knew the I team.
It was iconic.
Right? Like,
it was iconic.
Tom Shelby did the I team.
Yeah.
So it was like our local 60 Minutes, right? Like, here comes the I team. So I'm interning for the I team. So I did 2 really memorable undercover bits for the I team. I was the imposter cop. So I did a story with Trish Van Pilsum, was the reporter. We went out to Strikers in Golden Valley, which is like a police supply store. And I just went in and I was wearing like a flannel jacket with a camera embedded in it. And I just bought police stuff, right? I bought like a flashing light, bought like a hat, looks like police shirt, badge, says security, whatever. Bought all this kind of fake police stuff. And then we showed what it's like to, for people to be cautious if you get pulled over, like, is this a real cop or not? So we called MnDOT. There was a section of 8 Mill Road that was closed. So I had my little Saturn that I drove and with the flashing light and pulled Trish Van Pilsum over and came and tapped on the window. And here I am, imposter cop. So I was in that story. Then we did one on dating services. Cause keep in mind, this is mid-90s, essentially internet is starting. I remember I got an email address in college that we barely used. So dating services were still you would show up and look at a 3-ring binder with pictures of people that you might want to date. Crazy. Right? So we went to a couple of dating services on 494, we'd say Great Expectations and what are these dating services were, to expose the fact that they had fake people as their members, right? These weren't actual people you could date. Yeah. So real hard-hitting journalism. Right. So I wore sweater cam. So it was a blue sweater with the camera embedded, but it was 1995, so I had to wear a fanny pack that actually had the video camera in it. So I'm well, this is why I need a dating service, because I'm wearing a green fanny pack in the middle of the day. Right. So I go in, and then the woman who was interning with me, she had purse cam. So she had a camera inside of a purse and set it on the counter. So we're doing this stuff, and it was just a blast. Yeah, at that one, the person at the dating service you should have met the woman who was just in here. She'd be perfect for you. And I'm yes, I'm interning with her at WCCO, and you're gonna be on the news.
That's hilarious.
So it was just a lot of fun, and then turned that into working as a dispatcher at WCCO, which again is a job that does not exist anymore. Sadly, I mean, these newsrooms are so shrunk. It's so hard to find places to break in. But, we used to sit in this little tiny room right behind the assignment desk. So at the state, it's newsroom, all the reporters and producers, everybody, the assignment desk is a little elevated. They're tracking all the stories that are being covered, making the assignments. And then we sat right behind them. And it was a room filled with police scanners that were cycling through all the channels, and you're just listening essentially for crimes, and then sending a photographer out to shooting, stabbing, car accident, whatever. But there was a person who sat there and did this. So you would learn all the police codes and all that kind of stuff. And if there were big high profile things, you're really trying to pay attention to that. And so we would have somebody 24 hours a day. We worked in shifts. I think we mostly did 6 or 8 hour shifts where somebody was back there paying attention to that all the time. And it was a good way, we got paid nothing. And sometimes you did the, midnight to 6 a.m. shift and you're going insane. But you broke in. And then from there, I was a production assistant, helped out with some of the weekend newscasts and did some other things. And then we talk about my big break to actually getting on TV after that.
Yeah. And I got to believe that, you were kind of in the heyday of I think WCCO in the late 80s and early 90s into probably I graduated high school in 95. So we're roughly the same age, but, I remember these people to this day, right? Dave Moore, Ralph John Fritz, Don Shelby, Pat Miles,
the greatest,
Trish Van Pilsum. These are names that you say these names, it kind of brings me back to my childhood. And how cool is it to be in proximity? Mark Rosen, how can we forget about Rosie, right? So you've got all these people in proximity to you. And I think, just by osmosis, it almost feels like you're a better journalist because you're just rubbing up against some of the greatest hits.
Oh yeah. You're 22 years old and you're there with, Don Shelby and Colleen Needles are the 10 o'clock anchors.
Right.
Ralph John Fritz is there on the weekends. Rosen is the main sports guy. Amelia Santinello had just joined the station. So she had joined as a reporter and then she moved into a weekend anchor spot shortly after that. Yeah, it was just a great group of people. And it really was. I mean, I'm so glad I had the chance to work in journalism then before this kind of contraction that occurred, over these last, 20, 30 years, because it really did feel special what they were doing. And people still tuned in. I mean, there's cable news, of course, by then and all of that, but you didn't have all the social media, all of these other kind of outlets where people were getting their news. Still that 5 and 6 and 10 o'clock newscasts were really a big deal. And the journalists took it really seriously, how they presented the news and how they felt their role was in the community. So yeah, so I don't know. Do you want me to tell my great Dave Moore story? Right?
I want to make sure we get through everything, but if it's a good, you got to tell it because that guy's iconic.
It's just, so I ended up getting a job at KCCO, which was WCCO satellite station in Alexandria, Minnesota. So a friend of mine from dispatching and production assistant, she had gotten a job as a reporter up in Alexandria. And then she said, I need you, this is your path to being on air. Next opening, I'm going to advocate for you to get the next job at this station. And like, oh my God, this is the dream come true, right? So she's up in Alexandria, job opens up. I put together a resume tape with stuff I did from college, stuff I did with the I-team. You could get a photographer to go out and shoot some stuff. You put together a little, practice story on how you would put this all together. And so I applied for the job in Alexandria and I get the job. I'm going to go up there and be an on-air reporter at KCCO. So there's a tower in Alexandria, a tower in Walker. So basically everything north and west of St. Cloud in Minnesota, so down to like Wilmer and up to Bemidji, this is what you're seeing. This is your local TV is KCCO as opposed to WCCO. So I get the job. So I tell everybody in the newsroom, I'm going up to the station in Alexandria. Dave Moore is retired, his iconic newscaster pre-Don Shelby, still does that bedtime stories with Dave Moore bit, some of those things, right?
Yeah.
I tell Dave Moore's like 80 something years old at this point. I tell Dave Moore I'm going to Alexandria. He literally starts jumping up and down. He is so excited for me. He's like, Brian, this is great. I've seen you working so hard here in the newsroom. I'm so excited you're going to go on air. You're going to be great. Just to have like Dave Moore, right? Your childhood news anchor is like thrilled for you, like unbelievable. So that was my send off to go up to Alexandria. And then Alexandria is like, this is dream. And this is the sitcom I need to write. So if any sitcom writers watch this podcast and can help me get started on this. So imagine this, we're in Alexandria at KCCO, satellite station of WCCO. CBS owned and operated, right? So now I'm 23 years old and I'm an on-air reporter. I'm getting a paycheck from CBS. I'm like, oh my God, this is like David Letterman's paycheck with like 8 fewer zeros. This is so great. There are 6 of us who work in the newsroom. We're all between the ages of 23 and 26. The oldest veteran, the news director, who's also the anchor of our newscast, is a 26-year-old woman. She's great. She went on to Pittsburgh from there. But we don't know anything. And we are in charge of the news for this massive region, this big part of the state. And we're just running out and you do everything top to bottom, right? You go, you find the story, you call somebody, I'm going to come interview you. You go out by yourself, you shoot it yourself. You come back, you write the script, you edit it, you do the voiceover, you take the tape out, you walk the tape down to the control room, hand it to the director, he puts it in, newscast starts, he hits play, your story's on the air in this whole region. You're like, I can't believe I'm doing this, right? But just the idea, so it's sort of like, I always thought it was like Friends meets news radio meets Northern Exposure. You have all of these wacky stories that you're covering working in this area. So it's kind of like, Fargo, not as dark as the TV show Fargo, but like all these interesting and odd people in a place like that. And you're on the air. And so then you go out to dinner in town, and literally 100% of the people in town know who you are, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
It is like, and you're 23 years old, and you're just like, this is crazy. And then like we would hang out. There's a Hubbard station. Channel 5 had a satellite station up there as well. So similarly, they had a tower there and in Wilmer. So they kind of covered similar areas. So we were friends with the reporters at the other station. So we'd be out for beers, and people would see us. They're like, wait, you work at Channel 7. You work at Channel 42. You're not supposed to be friends. We're like, no,
Right,
it's
right.
okay.
Like it's
okay,
Anchorman
right?
or something like
It's
that. Like you guys are
Anchorman,
gonna go,
exactly.
yeah,
So
right.
no, it was so much fun, but such a great way to experience journalism and just learn the whole process and everything that goes into telling a story and how that works.
So you eventually get into politics. And so I kind of want to think about how to manage both time and because God, I feel like we could have a whole nother podcast on this. I mean, this is good. All right. So what was the inflection point of getting out of journalism and getting into politics?
So I covered the 1996 elections in Alexandria. So like I said, I liked politics. I was interested. So I just made myself the political reporter. So Pat Kessler, the political reporter, CCO, he's my mentor, right? So I'm calling Kessler all the time, working through stuff. I put together the first ever live televised congressional debate in that area in 1996 that I moderated as a 23-year-old. Congressman Colin Peterson, who was relatively new then, and his Republican challenger. I had Kessler on the panel with a newspaper reporter and a radio reporter doing all this stuff. So after that next spring, a state senator up there says to me, have you ever thought about, maybe working in politics? And, we're looking for somebody at the Minnesota Senate with a radio and TV background, and maybe you should apply for that. And I'm like, is that even a job? Right? Like, he's like, yeah, right. Instead of like reporting, like you would help me tell my story to people like you. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So I was coming down to St. Paul anyway for a meeting. So I interviewed for this job in the Minnesota Senate Republican Caucus for a radio and TV communications specialist. Like, no idea how any of this works. Never heard of this. So they offered me the job. So I call Kessler and I'm like, man, I love TV. It's so much fun. But like being a TV reporter is like playing minor league baseball, right? Like every couple of years you're trying to move up. You're going from Alexandria to Eau Claire to Madison to Des Moines to, right? You're trying to move up the food chain and like it's hard and you don't get paid anything. I mean, I think that year in Alexandria, I made like $14,000, right? Like it's brutal. Like you can only do it because you walk to work and drive the news van, right? So and so I had this chance then to come back, live in the Twin Cities, work at the Capitol, and still kind of be in the mix of journalism and storytelling, but from, the perspective of helping these senators. So I'm like, I'm kind of interested in doing that. So I call Kessler and Kessler's like, look, if you do it and you like it, like you'll be great, like you'll kill it. And this is going to be something really cool and interesting for you. And if you don't like it, you can get out and go back into journalism. Like people don't, it's not as stringent as it used to be about that. Like you can find your way back in. Mm-hmm. He's like, so, maybe it's worth a shot. He said, but if you decide to do it, go all in, volunteer for everybody, get involved, get to know everybody, network, just give it your all. I'm like, all right. So I took this job at the Minnesota Senate then in 1997. Didn't know anything about politics. Senate Republicans are in the minority. They'd put an amendment up for a vote. I'd see it start to pick up votes on the floor. I'm like, ooh, maybe this one's going to pass, right? Like, oh, it failed. Like, again, oh, it failed. And they're like, Brian, we're in the minority. None of our amendments passed. Like, oh, but what if it's a good idea? They're like, oh, that's nice.
That's cute.
That's cute. So that's how I moved into politics. And then so I get involved. Norm Coleman was running for re-election as mayor of St. Paul. So I just jumped right into his race. Then in 98, he's running for governor. I actually ended up moving from that job at the Senate Republicans. People saw how hard I was working and how much I love this. Arnie Carlson's office brought me in to do communications at the end of Arnie Carlson's second term. So I had a shot in the governor's office relatively early in my career. Went back out, ran some campaigns for the Minnesota Senate Republicans, did some other stuff. So yeah, I mean, I just took Kessler's advice and it was like, if you're going to do this, like go all in.
So,
And
so
I
you
really found it to my liking.
you went from so you go from Carlson and you're working with Norm Coleman and you're working with Pawlenty. And so if I remember right, I think Carlson was a Democrat and I
No,
think
he's a Republican.
So
Yeah,
you've
he was
been
a Republican before Jesse Ventura. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
He's basically a Democrat now, but yeah, he was very much a moderate Republican. Like I said, kind of that Eisenhower style, like centrist Republican.
So all of this whole journey in politics, and I mean, it's a pretty formidable journey and you did a lot of really cool things, but then that eventually informed you deciding that, and maybe it was decided for you that, was it decided for you that you were going to go do something else and then you decided to start your own business?
So the inflection point there was, so I'm doing all these different things. 2004, Tim Pawlenty, who I knew through all this stuff, because it's a small world and, we know who the people are, right?
Yeah.
He initially asked me to run his reelection campaign. So about halfway through his first term, I take a job running Tim Pawlenty's reelection campaign, which would be 2 years later in 2006. His press secretary left for a job with a PR firm. And I was at Tim Pawlenty's home the day that Ronald Reagan passed away. And so this is a big, like, we're all like Reagan kids, right? And then so his staff sends over a draft statement for him to put out. He gets it. He's like, I don't like this. Like, hey, Brian, could you fix this for me? Right. So I'm working on it, whatever, give it back to him. He's like, oh, this is really good. Like this, I like this. He's like, this is really good. He goes, well, you're a communications guy. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, maybe you should be my press secretary. I'm like, yeah, like I work for you, whatever. Like I can be your campaign manager. I can be your press secretary. Like what do you need right now? What's the more important need? He's like, I need a day-to-day spokesperson. I need a press secretary. It's like, great. So then on Monday, I was announced as his new press secretary. So I become his chief spokesperson in 2004, and I'm 31 years old. And Mark Brunswick at the Star Tribune he's like, I think you're the youngest spokesperson for a governor in the United States. And I'm like, I don't really know how to track that, but if you say so, right. He's like, well, I'm checking around. And he's like, I think I'm like, I'm not sure that's really a helpful story for me. So I was 31 and all of a sudden now everything I say is what the governor says, right? And you're like, this is also insane. Right. And there's no training for a job like that. We're like, literally like it is one of the true 24-hour a day, 7-day a week jobs. This is all pre-marriage, pre-kids, you have nothing. You are like singularly focused when you have a job like that. So I do that, come in halfway through the first term. He gets reelected in 2006 in a terrible year for Republicans. Almost every Republican in Minnesota lost. Well, they did lose across the country. It was the midterm of George W. Bush's second term. So just traditionally bad for Republicans. We managed to get reelected. And so then we get that second term. Then he's considered as a running mate for John McCain. We go through all of that. Then he decides that he wants to run for president. So that's the inflection point. At the end of his second term, he decides not to seek a third term as governor, which he could. We don't have term limits in Minnesota, but instead to kind of gear up to run for president, offered me a position to do that. I made the decision that my name ID and awareness in the business community and the journalism community would never be higher than after 6 years as the day-to-day spokesperson for the governor. So I decided to start my own firm then in 2010. And I had his presidential campaign as a client. So I worked with them. I worked with a group called Minnesota Forward, the business community had put together to do independent expenditures to support pro-business candidates for office, and then just kind of built it from there. So that was I felt like if I'm going to put a shingle out, like that's the moment in time to do it. I'm glad I did. I took that chance and that risk to just jump out there then. So that's when I started the firm 14 years ago in 2010, was at that moment at the end of his second term, kind of that transition period in politics for us.
And what I do know about you and the firm, because this is about the time when I was starting to get to know you and onboarding you with a C9er as a C9er, is talking more about your entrepreneurial journey. I didn't even know, at that time I didn't even know half of this stuff, but your entrepreneurial journey is probably a whole nother podcast too, because owning this business for 14 and a half years, you've had partners that have come and gone. You've probably taken different strategic direction. You've probably put a little bit of emphasis on politics. You've probably backed off of that here and there. So now as you've taken all of that experience that you've gotten both in journalism and politics, and now being a business owner and an entrepreneur for 14 and a half years, you've gotten to a spot where I feel like it's really clear on the direction that you're going. You've brought on a really interesting person onto your team that I think brings a lot of clout as well, from both sides of, the public sector and into politics and things like that. So tell me what McClung PR does now, and how you serve your clients. I teed it up a little bit in the opening, but I probably butchered it.
Well, I think, I feel like we are really found our sweet spot. And I mean, it only takes you 14 years as an entrepreneur. But, what we do is we help our clients, elevate their message and tell their story in a way that's compelling and helps them, inspire action. So most of our clients are in what I call kind of the advocacy space. They're trying to get something done. They're trying to do good things. And that's what makes it fun and exciting for us, is that we get to be part of that journey with them. So, like I mentioned, we just did an event a couple of days ago for the Minnesota Ambulance Association. So we've been working with the Ambulance Association for several years. And it's one of those things, like, everybody kind of gets it. And like, if you call 911, an ambulance is going to show up. But like, the ambulance EMS world is hurting big time. And the way that they're reimbursed and the way that the system works, it is not meeting the needs. We are relying on volunteers to fill in these roles with our EMS and ambulance services, and it's not sustainable. So we've been helping them tell their story. And it's funny, because then I ran into legislators like, God, I keep hearing them all this stuff about the ambulance. Like, yeah, that's because we're out there, having these roundtables and talking to media and bringing them in. So that's just one example. I mean, we have just a wide variety of really interesting and wonderful clients. I'm over here in downtown Minneapolis. We work with the Downtown Council. We work with the Minneapolis Regional Chamber. We work with the Center for Rural Policy and Development. We work with the Mall of America. We've worked with Lyft and Meta and other big organizations. So it's from everything, from these big multinational, organizations that need a local voice, to these trade associations and folks that are trying to, just kind of fight for attention and make sure people know what they're up to. So we love it. You mentioned, Kate Raditz works with me at our firm. She came over from WCCO TV. She was there for 10 years, has more than 13 years of experience as a journalist. She is fantastic. She knows everybody in every newsroom in town and is just widely loved and respected. A lot of these events where we moderate and do that, rely on her to do that because she's so talented. And so we really enjoy the organizations that we have a chance to work with. There's always room for more, right? I mean, we're always in the business development pipeline, but we are picky. I mean, we're selective. We are fortunate to be in a place where if somebody's not a good fit, then it's okay. Like, we don't have to do that. So we do really try to work for clients that we believe in and we appreciate the mission and where they're headed. And that just, makes it for a better experience. But we're in a great spot. We are, in a place where we don't really have very many competitors, right? It is our backgrounds, my experience dealing with this day to day in the governor's office, dealing with crisis communications, working through those kinds of issues, Kate's experience as a journalist, we bring really high level expertise to our clients. It is not kind of a churn and burn. It's not like I come in and sell you and dazzle you and then hand you over to somebody that just got started, right? Like, you're going to work with us and we're going to guide you through these things. So yeah, we're having a great time and just hope to, keep growing and keeping our clients happy.
I don't want to overstep or anything, but I feel like you're always going to be the type of owner that is going to have their hands in the client work and the business, and which is going, it kind of lends itself to saying that you're always going to stay as like a little bit of a boutique firm and specialized. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been doing a lot with C9 and with my group is exploring this idea of a lifestyle business versus an asset business. Is this a business that just kind of pays the bills and does the stuff we want, or is it something that I'm trying to build up and then sell at the end of my career? And where I've landed is kind of what I'm calling lifestyle plus, right? Like I want to grow a lifestyle business and make it bigger and do more with it. But I'm not really focused on doing all those things that it would take to just make it into a nugget that I can sell to somebody at the end of my career. And I've just kind of come to terms with that. Like at first I think I was like, God, well, am I a failure if I can't like make this into a thing that I can sell? Like that's a lot of business owners. That's kind of their driving force and what they have in mind for their business. And then I'm like, no, like do what makes you happy, enjoy it as you do it. Just kind of, figure out where you want to be on that spectrum and then maximize that.
Yeah. All right. Before we take a quick break, we're going to dive into 9 questions right afterwards, but tell me a little bit about your family.
Oh yeah. My family, my wife, Kathleen, is unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't do any of this if it weren't for her. She has the real job in our family. Kathleen is vice president and head of product marketing, communications, and training at Ameriprise Financial. So if that sounds like a big job, it's because it is. They have 10,000 financial advisors, and she's in that product space, helping people, think about how they talk about and do that. She spent 14 or 15 years in the PR part of Ameriprise before recently moving over to that role. So she's killing it. I mean, she's unbelievable, super smart, and just amazing. And we've got 2 kids. Our son, Mac, is 12. He's a 7th grader. Our daughter, Valerie, is 9. She's a 3rd grader. They're both redheads. I have the least red hair in our family. My daughter, in fact, says I don't have red hair, which hurts me deeply. Kathleen is super rad. The kids are like unbelievable. I mean, we took them to Ireland on a vacation. I was like, nobody's going to care in Ireland. Like I was wrong. The little Irish ladies went crazy for the redhead kids. They're doing great. We're going to get some good time together coming up here Thanksgiving. So looking forward to all that.
Good. All right. Let's take a quick break here. Let's listen to a few more of our community supporters, help keep the wheels on this thing. And we'll be right back with Brian.
Regardless if you're a startup just figuring things out or a medium-sized organization with a full team, having a legal partner by your side is crucial. Seiler Law is fiercely loyal to their clients and are passionate about removing headaches and roadblocks that can pop up during the growth of your business. Whether you need general outside counsel, are planning a business transaction, or even need someone to guide you through the estate planning process, the team at Seiler Law are the advocates for you. Visit seilerlaw.com to learn more. Seiler Law, where experience meets pragmatism.
Verseek Search and Consulting is thrilled to support Coalition9 for an exciting year ahead. Verseek is a Minnesota-based, high-performance recruiting firm that specializes in interim solutions, direct hire, and executive leadership search. Our team of experienced professionals and seasoned leaders across various areas of expertise and industries have been in your shoes. Your company's success hinges on the capacity of your people, and few areas of your business are more critical than your finance and accounting team. You need talent who can move the needle while winning the trust of leaders and stakeholders in your organization. Your people make it possible. Verseek can help connect you with the talented candidates within finance and accounting for consulting or direct hire needs, as well as within other industry areas in executive search, direct hire, and interim solutions. People are the ultimate business advantage. Find your people together with Verseek and make the best possible for your business. Learn more by visiting Verseek.com and by following Verseek on LinkedIn.
Kaisa Wealth Management treats each client like a member of the family. Acting as your personal CFO, we are fiercely devoted to your financial prosperity. At Kaisa, our wealth strategies are aligned with your core values, creating a wealth plan centered around legacies you wish to create. This is our Kaisa commitment. Our wealth strategies are dynamic and tailor-made for your long-term goals because as a fee-only investment firm, excellence in service is not just a promise, it's our baseline. Whether it's selling a business, planning succession, creating a legacy, navigating life challenges like death or divorce, supporting executives on the move, planning retirement, or preserving family wealth, we're here for you. Find out how we can help to simplify your wealth at kaisawealth.com. Mason Jar Marketing helps businesses bridge the gap between marketing and sales so they can crush goals. They're a collaborative partner, one who translates strategic priorities into actionable, goal-aligned tactics. You can count on them to deliver creative expertise and flawless execution for all marketing channels, no hand-holding required. If you're ready for a partner who listens well, thinks big, acts fast, and drives results, schedule a complimentary marketing needs assessment at masonjarmarketing.com. Security Bank and Trust has been a community supporter and the banking partner of Coalition9 since our inception. One of my favorite things about partnering with Security Bank and Trust is that I have a significant relationship at multiple levels within the bank. From grabbing lunch and building a personal friendship with the president, Andy, to welcoming multiple employees as C9 members, to seeing Andy's smiling face when I swing by the Eden Prairie branch, they get relationships and the banking needs of a business like ours. Check them out at security-banks.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Security Bank and Trust, growing together. In addition to our amazing prospering and thriving level supporters, we want to shine a spotlight on our equally amazing evolving level supporters. Alliant Insurance Services, Bauer Design Build, Beyond Design Resource Group, Entrabank, Fluid Interiors, and Modern Foundation. All of the Coalition9 community supporters can be found at coalition9.com/community-supporters.
All right, back with Brian McClung. Brian, in essence of time, I try and keep this thing to an hour. So you're a witty guy. You fired away some great questions yesterday to some of our panelists. So it's my turn to fire some questions at you. So let's do this quick fire style. Can you confirm to me you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
No clue. No clue.
All right. Question one. What are three words that describe you?
Verbose, humorous, and thoughtful.
Concur. What is the first album you ever owned?
Ooh, Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms.
Oh, good one.
Yep.
Great guitar solo. Great guitar solo. What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Strangest thing I've ever eaten. Ooh. I mean, octopus comes to mind, but it's not really that strange. So we'll just go with that for now.
All right, we'll take that. What is one thing that immediately brightens your day?
Ooh, seeing my daughter.
It's always kid related, right?
I know, right? I mean,
it's got to be. That's it.
Now my son will watch this and he's going to be like, I knew she was your favorite, right? So here we go.
She's the youngest. Take it easy, kid.
That's right.
Take it easy back. What is one of your hidden talents?
Juggling. Yeah, I played baseball growing up, right? And so when you're on the sidelines there, did a practice juggling. So I'm a pretty good juggler.
If you could compete in one Olympic sport, summer or winter, what would it be?
Breakdancing.
Ray Gunn retired. I'm so sad Ray Gunn retired. She was a revelation for the Olympics. And they canceled. They're not bringing that back for the next Summer Olympics.
She ruined it forever. Or it's special now. It's like a time capsule.
Yeah. It's a gift that keeps on giving now. Share one time that you were genuinely surprised.
Wow. I mean, when Donald Trump won the 2016 election, I was doing WCCO radio that night, right? With my friend Catherine Tanucci, who had worked for Mark Dayton. And she's just like, and I'm like, I don't think anybody saw that happening. So that was a long night on the radio.
Heck yeah. America spoke that night for sure. What is one thing people often get wrong about you?
That's a good question. I think maybe they think I'm more partisan than I really am. Like I'm a Republican. I'm not going to give that up. And but I'm a certain type, right? And maybe a type that doesn't exist much anymore. But I am not doctrinaire in any way. So I think maybe people who kind of just know who I am from politics might think I'm a lot more partisan than I am.
Yeah. And that might be a little bit because of the social climate too, of how politics is perceived and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay, ninth question already. I've been pulling this one out for certain people, and this one seemed appropriate with the specificity to your background. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of news anchors?
Ooh, yeah. So for me, Walter Cronkite for sure, right? Like he's an automatic. There's no doubt about it. Roger Mudd, who I talked about, had a relationship with when he was my professor at Washington and Lee. unbelievable. I would put Katie Couric up there as well, because I think she was so, for her to break through and for her career in journalism. She also called me directly on my cell phone in 2008 when it looked like Pawlenty might be McCain's running mate. And so for years, I saved a voicemail message from Katie Couric that I had that I thought was fantastic. And then I put Don Shelby up there too, because, have a local guy like Don, again, like growing up, and Dave Moore was there, but he was still a little bit before our exact era, right? Don was like the guy in local news for all those years. And I got to know him and work with him. In fact, he came up to our station in Alexandria when I was a 23-year-old reporter, and coached us about what it meant to be a journalist, and that he would take that time. I always reflected on that. So I think I'll go with those four.
Good four. I love it. You pulled those down quick. I got to tell you, I said this yesterday when I introduced you at that event. When the first time I met you at a Saints game a couple years ago, and I just genuinely liked you. And I didn't know who the hell you were. I didn't know what you did. I talked to you for maybe 5 minutes in a really busy space, and you felt very welcoming, and it felt very natural. Like, hey, that guy could be a friend. Like that. I like that about you. And I just wanted to share your story with more people. I could do a whole nother podcast with you. I'm so honored to have you as part of the Coalition9 community, obviously to be a part of that event yesterday, and, have you sponsored and all that other stuff. But man, you're just a good human being. And to me, it means the world to get to spread the good Brian McClung word and have you part of our community, man.
No, I really appreciate that, Aaron. And you're doing an amazing thing with Coalition9, and how it just kind of the ripple effects of all of it. It is so, the group that you found that I'm a part of is part of my family now. I get goosebumps even thinking about it. So I just can't recommend it. If people are watching this and they're not a part of it yet, reach out and get involved. It is really, it's a fantastic, amazing thing.
Well, how can people get a hold of you? How can they find you? What's the best way to get a hold of you there?
Just go to our website, McClungPR.com, McClungPR.com. There's a contact form on there. My email address, my cell phone are on there, right? Send me a note, reach out anytime. Happy to chat about just about anything.
All right. Well, on behalf of Brian, this has been the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.